Looks like we've got a pretty good group of folks so far. We thank you for being on time and here, and hopefully are excited about hearing a little more about STEMLD. If you've attended a previous webinar, some of this information will be familiar, but there are some new pieces, and we're very excited to be able to talk a little bit more in depth about the summer's activities, in particular around the early stages of professional development. So we'll wait just a couple of more minutes. I like to start 1 minute past, just in case we have somebody that's having technical difficulties. So when I see 3:31, we'll kick things off.
Is there a password for?
There should not be a password for this meeting, if you're asking me. It should be open.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was not on mute.
That's okay. The wonders of Zoom. Okay. All right, I'm showing 3:31, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. Welcome, and thanks again for being on time. My name is Law Loving. I am the Director of Career and Workforce Readiness at the Niswonger Foundation. I'm also the Workforce Coordinator on the STEMLD grant. Just as a quick intro, we're very excited to have some folks back. I know for some of you, this will be the second or third time you've heard some of this information. We've tried to add new pieces every time. This will be the most detailed piece yet. You will not be stuck with me for the entirety of this. So hopefully that brightens your day already. I'll be passing the baton between several of my colleagues, including one of our main contacts from TNTP, who will be doing a larger share out on their portion of things. So I'll let them introduce themselves as they go. Dr. Kitzmiller, anything before I kick off here?
No,
okay.
Just jump right in. We'll talk to the folks later.
Okay, sounds good. If you have questions, I recommend dropping them in the chat so you don't forget them. If they're really, really pressing, flag us down, particularly during Steven's portion here in a few minutes, and he'll be happy to answer questions there. So let's see. So yeah, let's begin just with a quick overview here. Just want to check and make sure. Okay, so just to answer the question in the chat, TNTP was initially the new teacher project. Now it is just TNTP because they do a number of other things as well. And Steven may want to elaborate more on that. All right, so STEMLD overview. This is at its core a research grant, which means that all of the different pieces that you're going to hear about and all the different things to come over the next 5 years are going to be evaluated for efficacy and for cost effectiveness and for several other metrics as well. Our overarching goal here is to shift STEM culture in middle and high schools. So you can see we're focused on grades 6 through 12 here. And those are going to include any school in our area that has at least 2 of those grades. So if you're a 6-7 or you're a 7-8-9 or a 9 through 12 high school, all those things would fall under this. You can see that this is an EIR grant. That's the grant program that it's part of. And it's an $8 million grant with a 10% match. So just short of $9 million when you factor that in. We are really excited to be working with not just our schools, our K through 12 schools, but also with some really exciting operating partners, including TNTP, who you've heard about a little bit already, but there's some other folks as well that we want to talk about on this presentation. So we'll talk a little more about them later and how they fit into the larger picture. Just want to give you a geographic idea of who we're working with or who we're hoping to work with. You can see that this includes a good chunk of Northeast Tennessee. There are some counties who are part of our normal Niswonger Foundation Consortium and some counties that we've done some work with in various capacities, whether it's through other grants or through Niswonger Online. So all folks that we've worked with in some capacity before, and we're very excited that we can bring that network back to the table again for STEM.LD. And now I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Vicki Kirk, who's going to introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about the professional development piece.
Thanks, Law. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vicki Kirk. Many of you may know that I taught 8th grade science at Greenville Middle School in my teaching days. I'm really excited about this grant as a science teacher. It's just the kind of professional development and opportunity that I would be looking for if I were still in the classroom. We have 3 levels in the grant, 3 parts to the grant. We're going to strengthen teacher instruction. We're going to equip teachers with some strong, effective professional development. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We're going to develop passion and interest among students through some out-of-school time activities for them. And then we are going to provide advanced STEM courses for high school students, something the Niswonger Foundation knows a little bit about. So those are the 3 parts of the grant. Together, we believe that that will increase students' interest and success in STEM areas. It is a research grant, as Law said. We will be measuring a number of metrics. You see some here: the STEM culture in the school, Algebra 1 opportunity and success rate, particularly at 8th grade, is something that we're interested in increasing, and improvements in math and science achievement. So let's talk a little bit about the PD. We believe an investment in people is always a good investment, and this grant puts a lot of investment in teachers. The resources and learning opportunities that they will have are going to be really rich and important. There are 2 levels to the PD. The first level is an orientation process. This is going to be run by TNTP and based on the opportunity myth. It is not content specific, so it's broadly applicable to everyone. So we are anticipating that everyone who participates in the grant will go through the orientation process. Now, we have heard feedback on this, and we are anticipating your needs. So we have built a lot of flexibility into this process, and we think you'll be pleased with the design of it. Once teachers have moved through the process or are moving through the process of orientation, then they'll be able to engage in the level 2, which is more content specific deep dive opportunities that will be offered by many of our partners, including a group out of MIT, BioBuilders, ETSU, and then some content specific standards-based training for middle school teachers. So there are going to be lots of good, strong opportunities that will be of interest and of great use to high school teachers. As Law said, Steven LaFemina is with us. He is our partner and colleague with TNTP, and he's going to elaborate now on this orientation process that we are planning.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see a few faces that I saw on one of the previous webinars, and nice to meet a few new folks as well. Like Vicki said, like Law said, my name is Steven LaFemina with TNTP. Thanks for your question, Tina, about TNTP and what we do. If anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer those as well. Just ping me and we can always follow up. Yeah, I think before I even start talking, I'd love to have just a little quick chat amongst all of us about one of the core questions that we would be helping kind of ask and answer throughout this experience, which is the one you see on the screen here. What do you think great STEM teaching looks like? So let's all actually just take a minute. I think the Zoom chat should be accessible for folks. And would love to see a few ideas in there, just a sentence or 2 about what you think great STEM teaching looks like. Bonus points if you also add what's hard about teaching STEM. It's good to know as well, because delivering great instruction is easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
think one of the things that good STEM teaching looks like is when you're incorporating real world issues and problems into the curriculum, and letting the kids learn to address some of just the social and the economic issues, and in sciences like the environmental issues that might be involved.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. I see that idea popping up a few times in the chat already, like applicable to their lives and allowing students to actually understand problem solving, problem-based. Yep. Exploration, real world events. Love the idea of cross-curricular as well, making sure it's not just like, you don't have to stay in one subject, right? Making sure you're pulling in from other places. All right, so like I said, it's a question we'll be asking throughout this experience, right? And I'll try to get better and deeper on. We can go to the next slide real quickly. Just a couple of influences that will help guide how we think about this. Mind advancing, please. Oh, sorry. So next generation science standards will also obviously come to bear a little bit on how we think about it. This idea of three-dimensional instruction and the concept of like not just having core ideas, but also larger conceptual ideas and the practices undergirding all of it, right? So bringing all these three are definitely part of what we're going to want to see in like great STEM teaching. If we can go to the next slide as well. I think from a TNTP perspective, one thing you'll hear from us is this idea of the opportunity myth. It's both a publication and a concept. It came from a national report that we did a few years back where we tried to take a student perspective on how they're experiencing instruction and thinking about what great instruction is from a student lens. In doing that, we basically worked with districts around the country, rural, urban, charter, traditional district. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a couple of the key ideas that came out of it. And I always love the first one. Like if you ask for students, like, what do you want with your future? Like 97% of students are all want some careers that require some level of post-secondary education, which is really exciting, right? And students are ready. When we think about what the opportunity myth really means, it's this idea that students are told if you try really hard in school, schools will give you everything you need and you will be able to access your dreams. And what we found is that happens in classrooms where great instruction is in place. But there are four things that we saw not necessarily happening for all students in classrooms. Often grade appropriate assignments, access to that grade appropriate work that's going to keep them on track for success and truly be ready. Doesn't always happen. This kind of strong, engaging teaching that you all are weighing in on a second ago doesn't always happen, right? Deep engagement, those about relationships, connections, and also just like authentic interest in the topics. And I think STEM is particularly well positioned to be able to like get to this deep level of engagement. And the last one is like teachers with high expectations. We have a couple ways we look at what teachers think are possible for their students, right? And where we see teachers have higher expectations about what students can achieve, that actually correlates with success of those students. So I highlight those four, again, what you see in number 3 in that list down there, because these will be some key ideas that we bring as TNTP to our role in asking this question about what great STEM instruction looks like. So we're just really looking forward on this topic in particular of being like a strong partner to all of you as we are kind of growing together in this process over the next few years. But more specifically and concretely, on the next slide, we can get into what orientation looks like. That'll be one of the first steps we all take together here. Overall, starting in April, we'll engage you in a flexible orientation that allows you to explore options for what STEMLD could mean for you and build a strong foundation for effective engaging STEM teaching, right? I would view this more as a process rather than a single event, right? We know you are all insanely busy right now, and you've had a very trying year. And so when we thought about this question about how to like have an engaging orientation that really sets the stage, we were definitely always balancing it with like, okay, but how do we meet the reality of where folks are at? So on the next slide, you'll see a couple of considerations we had as guiding principles for what this orientation could look like. The first thing we thought was really important is we're coming together as a STEM.LD community. By community, I mean educators, the instructional leaders on your campus, the external partners who are supporting. And in order to be successful, for all of us to be successful, all of us being aligned on what this great instruction looks like is going to be important, right? So there's going to be some flexible but required learning opportunities this summer that get us all using that kind of same common language, so that if we're in collaboration sessions later on and somebody says a concept, we all kind of, that's not going to sound too unfamiliar, right? So this idea of alignment in a common language is a big one. Instructional support is also another one. We thought about what's the best way to support teachers and their and your school communities, right? I think the answer, but school communities need support as well. And so what you'll see here is an emphasis on supporting instructional leaders defined as administrators, coaches, teacher leaders, other folks that are leading instruction, supporting educators in your school, to help them help teachers, right? So that your cycles of feedback, your cycles of professional learning just get strengthened over time. And what does that mean for orientation? It means we're going to provide a little extra support and training for the folks in those roles, in those instructional leadership roles. Third, I believe, and I think we all believe, that like schools are communities, and the more powerful and stronger that community is, the better for kids, right? And so this won't be just a siloed experience for educators and instructional leaders, and we all go on our merry way, right? Like we built into this process opportunities for your school community, for the folks working on STEM.LD to come together, ask some questions in the same space about what do we really need through this process, how do we tailor it, what's our vision, and so what you'll see is opportunities to do that as well. And the last thing, flexibility. Like I said, we'll start in April. This will run through the fall. And I say that not to scare you and make you think that's many months of intensive work, right? This idea of having a couple of key steps we want everybody to take spread out over a healthy amount of time so that folks can work it into their schedules, right? So you'll see that on the next slide, exactly how we imagine that playing out. So 3 phases basically on this, right? Spring, summer, and fall. If we think about spring, what we'd like to start out with is if you sign up for STEM.LD, first of all, thank you. It's exciting. We're looking forward to working with you. I'd like to start with an orientation meeting to talk through any questions you have and to help you start thinking about how you can tailor this experience for your school. And at that time, we'll have more information about some of the options that that Dr. Kirk was walking us through about what you can get through STEM.LD. Right? So that's how we get started, right? You'll know more about the process, have an individual meeting to start learning about this, and then go into the summer where we're going to have a couple of required trainings for folks based on what your role is. In this one, we're asking that the whole STEM.LD community, defined as educators, administrators, external partners, et cetera, will be participating in some sort of training around what this alignment, what this common language is. For educators and instructional leaders, we're seeing this as 6 hours of asynchronous training, right? That we would make available for you, and you can figure out when you can engage in that. But we do ask everybody would. In addition to that, back to this idea about instructional support and how important it is for that instructional leadership to go just a level deeper, to be prepared to be able to support teachers, to be able to give really great feedback on instruction. There'll be an additional 6 hours of synchronous training for that level of deeper. So thinking about how to observe classrooms, how to deliver feedback effectively, and a lot of other key concepts for supporting educators on that. So we'll talk in the next slide a little what that means exactly for hours for folks for orientation. And then the fall, right? We're excited that on October 30th, we'll all be able to get together and collaborate and exchange notes across schools and figure out where people are at. So that's part of the fall experience. But leading up to it, we'd love to be able to meet with each of the schools one more time to get see where your heads are at, see what questions have bubbled up throughout the course of the spring and the summer, and to help you think through exactly what your vision for STEM might be in your school. A lot of you already have a working vision for STEM, in which case it would be more about refining it. for those of you who are looking forward to the opportunity to put something on paper for the first time, this could be that opportunity in the fall, right? So, so again, to summarize, right, we have these 3 phases, right? We're starting off with just kind of a warm up about helping you think through how to tailor this for your experience, some flexible learning throughout the summer that everybody participates in, and then we start like putting that vision down on paper about where you're going to be going next in the fall. Let me pause before we go to the next slide, because I've been talking for about 8 minutes, and that's a longer period of time than I'd like. Any questions that are coming up right now before we go on to just one more slide here? Checking the chat as well.
So Law, the October 30th and meeting with all of the STEMLD community, is this something that, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, is this a regular school day? Is this something that's going to take place after school hours? I'm just thinking about, I flipped through my calendar and I see that that's a Saturday. So that answers my question about covering classes. So this would be a commitment outside of the regular school day, and we won't have to worry about covering classes.
It should not be. So that may be an error on our end. I think we maybe meant the 29th there instead of the 30th.
Okay.
So that's
So,
apologies on that. There
okay,
was supposed to be a shared admin or PD day, and Vicky, chime in if I'm saying the wrong thing, but there's supposed to be a shared admin or PD day that's pretty common across most, if not all, of our school systems at the end of October. And we were trying to capitalize on the fact that almost everyone would be off at about the same time to be able to participate in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard is the one that's
will
talked
you
to
please come
superintendent.
to Lucy's desk, please? Yes, please.
I'm not sure I heard if that was a question. I didn't hear it, but this area superintendents decided on their own that it might be nice to schedule some common PD days. And it's my understanding that about 8 of our districts have chosen a day, and it may be October 29th instead of the 30th. I apologize if I said it incorrectly. But some of our districts have that as a PD days already scheduled, and we were hoping to build on that. And those who are not off that day, we might ask for release time for folks to meet if we do it in person. But that is a common date for at least 8 of our districts. It is not a common across all the districts yet, but we're hoping that if we can claim that date early, we might get either permission for your scheduled PD or get release time for those that aren't scheduled to be off.
Thanks for raising that question.
Law, there's a question in the chat about specific obligations over the next 5 years.
Yep. Martin, if it's okay, we're going to dig into just a few more slides that may help answer some of that, and then we can circle back to it towards the end, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate the perspective on that as well, about like folks need to know like what they're getting out of this, what the benefits are to match with those obligations, right? So let's go to the next slide, and Martin, we can answer that question for the immediate future as it pertains to orientation here. So when we think about the school level, we've just to facilitate communication, thought about 2 different groups of folks, right? STEM educators defined as folks that are in everyday instruction, getting in there, teaching kids in STEM content areas, right? And school instructional leadership, and we have a little bit of a definition down here below. We're saying is it includes folks that are most directly responsible for supporting professional growth of STEM educators. So these are the folks that are getting into classrooms, offering feedback, delivering professional learning. We know this looks different across schools. There are some places where you might have one person who's literally doing all of that. They're both an administrator, one that's directly coaching and supporting educators, in which case for your school, what we mean by school instructional leadership is that person. But what we're asking for is, like, in this category, every school defines like who is their instructional leadership for STEMLD, and that ideally would involve an administrator and then someone who's responsible for coaching teachers. Could be a leader, could be an instructional coach. But what we really want here is to have a kind of that support base defined in your.
That's the one we talked about.
We know who we can be working with to help answer questions about how to best support STEM instruction. So I define those terms first because it means something for like who would be doing what. When it comes to educators, we're hoping that in this spring, what they have, the benefit is it's an opportunity to explore what STEMLD could offer them. These different offerings that are going to be provided for kind of these deep dive supports starting in the fall. So the benefit for orientation in the spring starts there. Also, they're going to be part of this training that's going to help make them feel more comfortable in like the overall conversation on STEM.LD, right? So whenever you show up to a conversation or you're working with other professionals that are in STEM classrooms, STEM educators, we'll be able to collaborate a lot more effectively and easily. And also it's an opportunity for school communities to get together, right? So being part of these conversations about where STEM is going in your school. I used to be a middle school math and science teacher, and for me, like I really like being part of those conversations where an administrator would ask me like, where should we go? Where are we going? What's the vision? And I got to kind of speak up and talk about what was best for my students. So this process, this orientation builds in opportunities for that too. What does it mean in terms of some of these required activities? We ask that there's some engagement in school level conversations in the spring, that the time might look a little different school by school. We ask about that folks participate in 6 hours of asynchronous training in the summer. And that in the fall, there's both attending that now probably October 29th date, if I understand correctly, and also participation in school level conversations here. For school instructional leadership, it's a lot of benefits here. And I do a lot of supporting with folks in this role around the country. And some of the richest, best conversations I have are when you kind of co-observe a classroom together. You're both looking at the same thing. You get to debrief afterwards and say, what did you see? What did you see? What does great look like? Let's norm around that. This is the kind of conversation and learning that we're talking about here with school instructional leadership, and to an extent with STEM educators as well. So some of the benefits here is you're going to be able to engage in that kind of professional learning. And so when it gets to supporting educators, you're going to be equipped with some new tools, some new resources, and some additional experience beyond what you have already, and how to support educators. And then, like I said, it's an opportunity to really put down on paper, if you haven't already, or refine an existing vision for STEM. And again, we built all that into the orientation process. What does it mean for time? So the active verbs for educators was that they're going to be engaging these school level conversations, but for instructional leadership, we're asking that you lead them. That in the spring, there's some proactive work you do to prompt the question of the folks in your school working on STEMLD about what the needs are going to be. And in the fall, prompting that question around what's the vision. And then the summer, this balance of asynchronous and synchronous training around how to not only get that common language around what great STEM instruction looks like, but also go to the level deeper to actually engage with other colleagues in instructional leadership roles around how to offer that feedback and otherwise support teachers. So this again is the immediate answer to like, what are some of the benefits you're going to see through orientation in the next few months? And then also, what are some of the kind of required activities that we're asking folks to engage in so that we all can start off with a strong foundation? That was a lot of words for me as well again. So I'll pause again, see what questions I might have raised with that walkthrough of some of the specifics for the summer.
And let me just interject very quickly. We've definitely gotten that October 30 date wrong. Please don't get hung up on that. We'll find a day or a series of days that work for folks. That hopefully will not be a sticking point for people. But we definitely want to find the right time in that window, late October, early November, sometime in the fall semester that works for folks. I know somebody else brought up a conference that could conflict, and that's a potential big confliction. So definitely want to make sure that I say that.
Yeah, and again, thanks for raising it. I know, like as this is coming together, I just really appreciate like the feedback and the conversation for it. I mean, even since the kind of webinar one, when we had some initial idea about exactly how orientation would work, some of that feedback has pushed the model to, I think, be even better, where there's like more overall engagement, there's more flexibility, more school level conversations about that. So just love the dialogue.
So if there aren't any immediate further questions from Steven, and I know that this at least partially answers your question, Martin, and we'll continue to try to dig into that in subsequent slides. We'll move forward here.
Can I ask one more quick question? When you're looking at this training and all of these things, this would be for the schools that are selected in the randomization. Is that correct?
For middle schools, yes. So middle schools, there will be a randomization process. We're talking about the treatment schools. Now, if you were in a middle school that was not selected for a treatment for the treatment group, you would still get this, but you would just get it in on a delayed start. So we're looking at probably 2 years out or so. You would then get the chance to go through these same pieces. We've actually shifted the model. So depending on which webinar you were able to catch, early on, we were thinking the same thing would apply for high schools, but in this case, we'll be able to actually have all high schools start from day one. And we've got kind of a workaround for that. So if you're thinking about high schools, if you want to participate, you're in the treatment group to start. Great question, though. All right, I'm going to move forward then, Steven. Thank you. And Steven's going to hang around, by the way. So if you're germinating on things and wanting to throw something out a little later, he'll be here to answer questions. So I'll just briefly say that the next piece of this, in addition to the professional development, is out of school time activities, something that makes STEM.LD a little bit unique. We're not aware of a lot of other research grants of this level that are trying to evaluate this piece, because it's very difficult to compare this across multiple partners, multiple types of activities. You can see a list there of some of the things we anticipate having that we already know we're going to be able to offer. We also anticipate this being a little bit responsive. So as demand for this thing or that thing grows in an area, we'd like to be able to just support that organically rather than us dictate what's important. We do have some strong partners that we'll introduce in a couple of slides that will be leading a lot of these activities, certainly the ones that we already know about. We do also know that there will be a chance for folks in the community to help lead these. So if you're a teacher, or if you're somebody in a school that wants to lead a STEM activity and has an idea for something that would be a good out of school time piece, that's on the table. If you have the bandwidth to do that, we would encourage that and try to find a way to support you with that. But we also know that your bandwidth is limited, so we don't expect that necessarily out of anybody. And to that end, we're going to be working on gathering a group of community champions. You can see that in the yellow box there. So what we'd really like to have is, in every community, a person or two that is connected to the STEM world in one way or another. Maybe they're a retired engineer, or maybe they're pursuing a medical school degree, or maybe they're actively working in a STEM field now, or maybe they just like STEM. Maybe they're just interested in something in the STEM field. But we're trying to find folks that will be able to help spearhead some of these groups, possibly communicate the opportunities to different students. We want this to be something that's broadly available to lots of different students in lots of different situations and lots of different areas. So we don't want geography or school size or anything like that to be a limiting factor for folks being able to participate. And I'm going to kick it back over to Vicki, who's going to tell you a little more about this slide.
We're going to talk a little bit about advanced coursework now. And I mentioned this earlier, the Nice Longer Foundation has been doing this for a while in our region, offering equity to schools by providing advanced coursework, strong advanced coursework for high school students in particular. This would include dual enrollment, dual credit, and AP courses. Some offered in an online format, some offered by the partners that Law will share with you in a minute. So we're really excited about some of these, and they're going to be coming online soon. We know that you're scheduling right now, so it may pick up speed after the fall, maybe into the spring and into next fall. But you can see some of the examples there, and they're very strong and interesting and specific in a lot of up and coming STEM fields. So I think it will be exciting for students and for the teachers to be able to point their students toward these courses as they take what they have available at the high school. We're also looking to increase middle school Algebra 1 availability, access and achievement. We want to help schools and districts get teachers who are certified to teach Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, and that will be also a focus that we will have. So these will be coming online, and we'll have more information about them soon, but it's a good opportunity for your students. So now back to law for the partners.
So thankfully, if you've attended a previous webinar, I've been able to do away somewhat with the world's worst Venn diagram. I promise I did Venn diagrams when I was in school and I learned them, but I didn't have a very good one here before. So now I've managed to group things into a couple of buckets. I just want to highlight quickly kind of the general spheres that we expect these partners to play in. You can see that the professional development bucket includes TNTP, as well as the Niswonger Foundation. So we know that Vicki will be leading some professional development pieces as well in some key areas. The other partners you can see there will be participating in some professional development as well. So these are the folks that will be offering some version in some field or another of the deep dive sort of phase 2 or level 2 professional development. Once you've completed your work with TNTP in the initial level, you'll have some opportunities to do this as well at the advanced level. I will mention too that TNTP may very well be doing an advanced level of this as well. So it may be possible to do that with them. But we've also got University of Alabama at Huntsville doing some cybersecurity things. If I Had a Hammer is a hands-on math specialist group out of Middle Tennessee. You may have seen them at a previous Niswonger Foundation symposium a couple of summers ago. ETSU will be doing a number of things with us, and we're sort of using them as a flexibility partner. So the piece that you saw on the last slide about epidemiology, they'll be spearheading that. We've said several times, we want this grant to be responsive. Well, 2 years ago, epidemiology may not have been on everybody's radar, but it sure is now. So this is something that we want to continue to keep relevant and timely in terms of what's going on in the world. ETSU is helping with that. StreamWorks is a local partner. They do a lot of things with robotics and engineering. BioBuilder is our synthetic biology partner. They're spun out of MIT, but they're their own foundation, and they've done a little work in this area. Some of you may be familiar with them. Purdue University will be helping with some engineering and pre-engineering pieces. Civil Air Patrol will be aerospace. And probably the most substantive change is, in addition to helping out with those advanced coursework pieces, as we've worked a little more closely with Walters State and Northeast State, we've learned about some of their capabilities beyond just the advanced coursework piece. And so there's some opportunities to do some professional development with them, as well as maybe even some OST activities to partner with. So if you've got strong partnerships with either of those at this point, they'll continue to play a role in STEM.LD as well. And I'll just mention our evaluator, Anlar, at the bottom there. They are a longtime partner of ours. We've worked with them on a couple of other federal grants. They're great to work with and really make us feel good about having a good shot to have a well-evaluated grant over the course of the 5 years. So I mentioned a little bit about this earlier, and I'll just rehash it very quickly. If you're thinking about middle school and high school, then they're really in two separate groups as far as the research design is concerned. The middle school will be part of a randomized control trial, which means that we will take every middle school that has signed up and committed to being a part of STEMLD. We'll put them into a group. We'll randomize them. This will all be live streamed, by the way. We've done this before with other grants. So you'll get to see very quickly in real time whether your school is selected or not for that. And so then we'll go from there with the treatment group starting over the summer and into the fall, or really starting in the spring up through the rest of this year. The high school looks a little different. The quasi-experimental design means everybody gets to start right off the bat. So what we'll do there is pair data behind the scenes with similar schools in terms of demographics, so school size and other pieces, just to try and have a comparison group there. So there aren't as many high schools in the sample, obviously. So that's why we're able to do that, is to go with that QED piece. So if you're a high school, you can certainly participate right off the bat. Of course, if you are a school that happens to have both middle school and high school grades, then the opportunity is there to participate as the high school and then also put your name in the hat as a middle school and see where that nets out as well. We are very sensitive to data collection. This is not our first rodeo when it comes to that. And so we do know that we'll be doing everything at an aggregated level. We won't be looking at individual student data really ever. Everything will be done to protect PII, personally identifying information. All right, so let me toss it back over to Vicki here to talk a little more about data collection.
Speaking of data collection, Anlar, our partner, is a very experienced research group. They know what they're doing. Most of the data that we need to collect can be collected at the state level, so there won't be a need to ask you for much. We may need to ask for a little bit, but we are committed to limiting the burden on schools and districts. We don't want to burden you with data collection or provision. We're going to take care of most of that. We'll also be taking some data from our PD experiences in terms of surveys and pre and post tests for teachers. Same thing with OST. We will want to know which students are participating repeatedly, and that will help us get a handle on how those are going and how those kids are doing in school. You can see examples of the data that we are going to collect there, but as I said, most of it is easily accessible to us at a state level. And again, I would reiterate what law has said. We will de-identify the data. This data won't be used to identify schools or school systems, or certainly not students or teachers. It is intended to show that treatment schools, the ones who are in this group, are improving at a faster, more rapid rate. So it will be as a whole and not identified by district or school. In order for us to have robust data collection, we need high participation rates among those schools that raise their hand to be a part of STEMLD. So we are asking that 100% of STEM teachers would participate in the orientation process. And we've worked hard to try to make that an easier thing to do. By STEM, we're talking about math, science, CTE STEM teachers. We also expect, as Steven explained, that an administrator or someone who will be leading that effort for STEM for that school would be also participating. Martin asked about obligations. I would consider that an obligation. We believe that 80% of the teachers will then participate in a deep dive, content-specific training. They are going to be very high interest, very useful trainings and PD opportunities for teachers. You can support us in that by providing them with PD credit, whatever kind of credit you're giving for PD, giving them that for participating with us on these days and in these events. We will need to know how many STEM teachers are at each school so we can calculate the rates. Other than these commitments and maybe a little bit of data, what we will be asking you for is to support our OST activities by advertising them and encouraging students to participate, and perhaps even providing a location for them to meet at your schools. But we believe the commitments here are pretty low on the school and system part in terms of what we're asking you to do. And the return on investment, we believe, will be very high given the strong opportunities that teachers are going to have with the grant. Now it's Richard, I think, is going to talk about our timeline.
Well, and I'll just interject very quickly. So in order to sign up, we do have a quick commitment form. Doesn't take very long. It does require the principal of your school to fill it out. It's actually in the chat now. We'll send it out again after this. But if you want to go ahead and take a look at it, that's the link that was just dropped in the chat. And we would encourage you to fill that out as soon as you can. We're not totally out of time yet, as you can see from our timeline slide here, and I'll let Richard talk about that, but we're coming closer to time. So if you haven't yet made a commitment, discuss it with your folks and then think about filling that out. Sorry, Richard, go ahead.
Okay, I just referring to the calendar, I've just dropped a date change to correct something that I've said, but I will call it out in just a second. Okay, so we are at the March 30th. If you look at the timeline, we're at the March 30th webinar. We're introducing as much detail as we possibly can. We will still convene with schools. We'll still convene with our partners, and things will evolve. But this is the best information we can give you at the moment. And so we've done the 3 introductory webinars. We do ask that schools commit. We're hoping that every one of you will say our school is in by April the 5th, and it is our goal to take the schools that are in to put them onto our yes list. For the high schools, you're automatically in. For middle schools, you will enter the randomization process. Half will go in treatment, half will go in control, which means a deferred implementation. Now, dates that aren't on this timeline, but we've mentioned them today. Stephen mentioned a individual school orientation meeting. At your discretion, you can schedule. If you're in a treatment school, we will work with the principal or key leaders to set up an individual meeting with our staff and your school where we can understand your school better, starting as early as April the 8th. So we can learn about your summer, what's going on in your school. We can learn about the makeup of your faculty. We can learn about strengths that you have. We can work with you on what do you want to improve that you know about, maybe in your existing school plan. So we will start scheduling those, and it's not every STEM teacher in the school has to be at that meeting, but a key representation, leadership for sure, and others as invited by the school for an individual meeting sometime in this process of orientation, starting as early as April the 8th. The July, what's called out here for orientation, professional development, as Stephen mentioned, that's asynchronous. So we will publicize that, and you can do that during a school day. You can, a work day, you can do it after hours at home, you can do it on a weekend, but we're hoping folks will do the asynchronous training to familiarize you with the concepts that the STEMLD is built on. The mistake that I made earlier was the October 30th date. And as I said, some districts are scheduling a common PD day. Some districts thought it was too late. They had already established their calendar, but October 22nd, not October 30th, as previously mentioned, is the common PD day. So again, the schools that are off, we will try to collect as many as we can together. We may ask for release time for others of you, but we'll get so that we can have dialogue between the schools. We'll set up that day for just a common language, a common activity day. And so the deep dive professional activities can start as early as fall, but they might start in the winter. Those will be completely an individual choice. A math teacher will certainly likely to choose something different than your biology teacher, than your CTE STEM teacher. So we will have those, and those will be completely as determined by the school and particularly by the individual teacher. So that's, and then this is it will cover 4 school years. So we will be getting more and deeper and more out of school time activities. So as this program grows, we don't even anticipate all the things that can happen by 2023 or 2024, but together we will continue to make this better and better. And it will be evolving, but this is the best we can tell you about the timeline at the moment. And next slide, please. We'll want to introduce, you have today heard from me, Richard Kitzmiller, the STEM director, STEMLD director. I spent half of my career being a middle school math teacher. I spent half of my career in administration, including 10 years as superintendent in Kingsport. And I've spent the next 10 years, my retirement job has been working as vice president for the foundation. You've met Vicki, you've met Lyle, you haven't met Brittany, you haven't met John, but they are important parts of our grant, and I think they're on here today, and we'll introduce them more a bit later. But now is the time for you to ask questions. And I know that we have 42 participants, but you can either drop your questions in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. But I would like to answer a question that we did have in the chat earlier, and we said we'd come back to it. The benefits will be besides the in-service credit and those kinds of things, there are benefits just from learning to do your job better and from really quality providers. The folks that will be working with you are world-class in many cases in terms of doing what they would like. And so many folks will do it just because of the professional challenge. But also, though, know that we cannot possibly enumerate all the dollar amounts. But if someone is in a deep dive curriculum and there's travel to Boston, let's say to MIT, the grant will provide that. If you have an out of school time activity that you design, we can support that financially in many cases. You know, don't assume anything. We'll work with you to make those assumptions. But much of the grant is to support the school activities. So if you are led to an activity or to some professional development that requires some funding, we quite likely will be able to help you with the professional development side, with the student activity side. We will be funding most of the out of school time activities for students. We will be bearing costs for developing new courses and steering folks toward career-focused career pathways. So there is funding to go along with the professional development. So the learning that the teachers have will be high quality, and support for implementing this professional development will also follow with the grant. Now let's see. I did not answer that as well as I would have liked, but we would yield now to any questions that we might have. I don't see any in the chat, but unmute yourself, please, if you have questions.
One other thing that I'll mention from our end, we know that we've had several webinars, that some information has shifted over these webinars, and that various folks from various schools have been able to make, depending on their timelines, different ones. So if you're hearing this and thinking, this sounds good, but we'd like to just discuss it a little further, the foundation, whether it's me or Dr. Kirk or Dr. Kitzmiller or some combination of us, we are around and available to discuss with you and whatever other team members you want to bring to the table. If that will help you think through this and decide one way or the other, more than happy to do that, because we don't want anybody to feel like, well, I only heard a snippet of things at one time, and so then I didn't have the most up-to-date information. We'd love to have everybody participate. So if that will help, take us up on that. That's why our information is up here. More than happy to answer questions at any time. I stalled long enough to get some kind of something in the chat. Let's see what it is.
That's John.
Okay. Yes, and the Google slide deck is there. So if you want to take this back to other folks, you can certainly do that. Do note that the October 30th date is wrong, however, if you share that out. Any other questions?
While we wait on questions, I'm going to reiterate what Law said. If we want every school in this area to be part of this, we truly think it's a good thing for you. We hope we've done a good job describing the potential for you and for your students especially. We welcome any call between today and Monday, and especially if you're sitting in your office Monday wondering, do I sign this school commitment agreement? Do I do the school participation form? Don't let any question go by. We would be happy to meet with you, and we'll be on standby all day on the 5th if you want to contact us and have a personal conversation with a question that you don't want to ask today, or that comes up between now and Monday. So we're hoping to get all of the schools committed to this, and we'd love to work with you.
All right. Well, speak now or forever hold your peace. Just a couple of last reminders. We'll send this webinar recording out afterwards. So look for that sometime in the next couple of days. And we'll also include that commitment form link. It is in the chat now still. So if you want to click it, go ahead and do that, and you can check it out. You can look at it before filling it out too. You don't have to fill it out all the way. But oh, we have a question. Is this a curriculum program or does it work with our current things we are teaching?
It can be both. It can be both. Right, Law? There'll be some new curriculum. If you're,
Yep.
if you go with the bio builder or something like that, they have a curriculum that they'll train you on. But some of the trainings can be incorporated into existing science coursework. We're going to work on developing a 3D phenomenon-based lesson training for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. So there are lots and lots of options here. Lots of ways to incorporate it into your current teaching or into new courses that you may want to offer.
Yes, I'm going to be more blunt. We are not trying to. There is no standardized curriculum that we're asking schools to adopt. There is no curriculum adoption. We will work within the Tennessee curriculum, within your district's curriculum, and we will supplement it with things that you learn about tying it to careers or making it more engaging for students or making it more hands-on and more active. There may be enhancements to your curriculum, but no teacher will be asked or expected to change the curriculum that the state and their district have chosen for them.
Right.
So it's not a curriculum program. We're hoping it will enhance your curriculum. Thank you for the question, Brad.
All right. Oh. Okay. You're welcome, Brad. Okay. So if that's all we've got, then we'll go ahead and close for today. Again, keep an eye out for the commitment form and the link to this webinar. If you want to share it with other folks, by all means do so. It's publicly available. So we thank you all for your attention and for being here on time, for asking good questions. And we're very excited about the chance to partner with you on STEMLD. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.